So, Garry's Mod. Amazing game, right? I mean, why else have people wasted a whole year of their life playing this game? Well, by itself, the base Garry's Mod experience is fun, but definitely limiting. Not to undercut the amount of creativity done under these conditions, but a GMod experience without any add-ons or internet access is kind of a shallow one. I mean, when GMod first came out, there was no workshop, no garrysmod.org, no anything. It was just a simple Half-Life 2 mod with a fizz gun added to it. We did eventually get construct and some means of spawning stuff, but the game was still limited by the base Half-Life 2 props and occasional basic shapes. Again, not to overshadow people's creativity during these early days, but some critics did express that the game got boring after a few hours. Besides building contraptions, was there anything else to do? Not really. But that's how things remained for a while, until version 9, where we were graced by GMod's greatest feature, LUA coding. LUA coding opened the door for many creative add-ons for Garry's Mod, and there were so many being made that an entire website was created just for hosting them. During the early days, we saw the creation of so many iconic add-ons such as Dismemberment Mod, Nuke Packs, and of course, Zombie Survival. Oh, so good. But what a lot of people don't know was that the introduction of LUA coding was both a blessing and a curse for Garry's Mod. Bad actors soon realized that the LUA system can be exploited in several different ways. It could be something annoying like making your character jump non-stop as shown in this video right here, or it also could be something serious like the facehook viruses where it had the ability to break your entire PC. Like, it got so bad back then that a website was made just to document all the different types of viruses. When GMod updated to version 10, most of the exploits that allowed for the more destructive viruses were patched out. Most viruses were back to being minor annoyances to people who just wanted to play the game. Keyword most. Despite the vastly improved security, this era of GMod would see the rise of two notorious viruses. The first being the 2009 GMan Virus. To make a long explanation brief, when a player gets infected with the virus, this stretched image of the G-Man's face flashes on screen, accompanied by a loud screeching noise. If the player were to try and close the game, a message will pop up saying you're in the pits of hell, before redirecting them to a website called nimp.org. From there, the site would spam open itself multiple times, all while audio of a guy saying "I'm looking at gay porno" plays in the background. This is similar to a more infamous website, You Are an Idiot, and just like You Are an Idiot, this will keep going until your PC crashes. Not much is really known about the GMan virus, but what we do know is the virus's likely creator, Chris Aster. Now, Chris Aster was a very controversial name back in the early days of GMod. He was a massive headache for many players and server owners alike, as he created several different exploits that disrupted normal gameplay. The exploits range from spamming the console with "hacked by Chris Aster" to crashing an entire server just by joining it. A lot of people have expressed their hatred towards Chris Aster, with one of them straight up saying they wanted to kill him. Like, guys, you do know this is all just a silly sandbox game, right? Anyway, Chris Aster has also advertised his exploits on the forum scythe.org, where he sold them for real money. He's also shown chat logs of players that were affected by his shenanigans. So, if there was anyone who knew how to exploit the source engine, it would be Chris Aster. Now, was he behind the GMan virus? Possibly? Some players that were affected by the GMan virus have claimed that they were brought to a chat room called Nimped by Chris Astor, and others have called it the Chris Astor virus. So it could be him? However, Chris Astor himself has never claimed responsibility for it. So who knows? There's a lot of guesswork when it comes to the GMan virus because this particular virus has little to no media surrounding it. Any screenshots or videos of the virus in action have been lost to time. The only two pieces of surviving media possibly showing the GMan virus is a Kitty0706 video called The Random Tales of G-Man Random Redefined and a Screamer video called GMan Scary Movie. Besides those two videos, there's nothing, almost like the virus never existed. Hell, that's what I thought when I first talked about it for my GMod iceberg video. Despite its status now being labeled as lost media, the GMan virus and its alleged creator, Chris Astor, would remain in infamy for years to come. But 5 years after the GMan virus, another virus would come along. One that had a way bigger impact compared to its predecessor and would cause widespread panic upon the GMod player base. However, despite its infamous status, it could have been way worse. This is the cough virus incident. So imagine this, the date is April 18th, 2014. You have just gotten back from work, or school, or whatever you do. You need some time to wind down, so you boot up Garry's mod and click on the multiplayer browser to join your favorite server. Interestingly enough, you notice that the server name had 3 exclamation points in front of it. Not really thinking much of it, you decide to join anyways, only to be greeted by this.
He threw 2 discum bulbs.
Happy birthday.
Shit, and he threw an incense. And he threw an incense.
That's big.
Excuse me, what the actual fuck?
Obviously, there's more to this other than it just being weird, but I'll explain later. Now bewildered, you relaunch the game and decide not to rejoin that server. Instead, you go to a server that didn't have the 3 exclamation points. At first, things are normal. Until you decide to look at Steam. Randomly, your Steam name was changed to Vinyl Fixit, and you've sent the messages cough cough or Fixit Vinyl to everyone in your friends list without your knowledge. You look back at GMod and notice that a good majority of the players on the server have suddenly disconnected. Congratulations, you have just spread the cough virus.
Oh no.
The cough virus incident to this day is considered the most infamous events in all of GMod, even surpassing the GMan virus. It certainly wasn't as deadly when compared to the GMan virus, but on raw numbers, this was on a wider scale. It is unknown exactly how many people were affected, but according to a source that I'll get into later, allegedly over 30,000 players were infected. If you look at the Steam charts during this time, it definitely checks out. This was widespread. But how did it get to this point? Well, it's hard to say on how exactly the virus started, but we do have a pretty clear idea on how it spreads. Shoutouts to Handsome Matt for summarizing how this virus works, by the way. He has way more coding knowledge than me, which in my case is none, so all the credit goes to him. I'm just retelling it in a more digestible, less tech nerdy format. It starts with an infected player. Now, a player that's been infected with the virus won't immediately know something is wrong until they join a server. Once they join a server, the virus becomes active and attempts to gain access to the server's Archon, or remote console. It does this by requesting and looking through the server's internal files, like CFG or TXT files, attempting to find a password. If it doesn't find a password, or if there isn't a Archon active, then it will simply do nothing. But if it does find a password and gain access to the Archon, then it will upload a file to the server called gmsvenginewindows.dll, which allows it to spread. It will also add 3 exclamation points at the beginning of the server name, almost as if it's a warning to not join.
I have a list here of all the infected servers. You can see here there's 12 pages of infected servers now. There's 11 right before I started the video, and this list is growing really fast. So you definitely don't want to join any servers with 3 exclamation marks at the front and the hashtag at the end, because that will get or that will do so you get infected.
If you were trying to avoid the virus back then, your best bet was to avoid the servers that had these 3 exclamation points. Or, you know, just not play at all. After that, it begins the process of infecting other players, starting by running a Lua script from a Github page, which, keep that in mind, it'll become important later. This script writes a bunch of DLL files to the victim's game folder, which are executed upon launching the game. These files are masked as normal game files, such as engine win32.dll or gameshader generic engine.dll. Once it's done copying all the files, it will then forcefully crash the victim's game. First playing loud music over the entire game, then displaying this picture of an Asian man eating a carrot before crashing the game. Quick side note, the picture of the Asian man eating a carrot is actually a GMod dev by the name of Kilburn or FixitVin, but we'll get back to him later. While the game is crashing though, the virus will also mess with the victim's Steam account too. First, it will set the victim's Steam name to vinylfixit @ then it spams the entire friends list with FixitVin or just cough. And finally, it will send out 2 friend requests to the Steam users AceCool and Tom, which we'll be getting back to them later. After that, if the victim decides to relaunch GMod and load into a server that wasn't affected by the virus, then the cycle repeats. However, if the victim decides to load into a server that was already affected by the virus, then you get scenes like this. Every player in the server is spamming the word cough in chat, and each time they do, a coughing sound is emitted from their player model. The game is still playable, but it's definitely hard to ignore the constant coughing. Now, that does explain how it spreads, but how did it get this bad? It would be understandable if only like a few hundred people got infected before it was patched, but again, over 30,000 players were affected by this virus. Well, here's the thing, when the virus first started spreading around, it wasn't immediately causing havoc upon servers. In fact, it was silent. Not one person had a clue that they were spreading around a virus that would later cause panic upon an entire community. However, since the virus was linked to a Github page, all the creator had to do was change a couple of lines of code for it to become active, and that's exactly what he did. He coded the virus for it to become active once the clock reached midnight. This video from Maniacal Raptor shows the exact moment the virus becomes active.
These ones don't...
This back. Oh, you know what?
What? No. Oh my god. I did.
Now, what I find kind of concerning about this video was just how sudden it was. There was no warning, he wasn't on any public server, it just kind of happened out of nowhere. While the virus was spreading, people over on social media quickly began to notice that something was wrong. I just got the message cough cough from everyone on my friends list twice at the same time. I asked them and they have no idea that they sent it. What is going on? There is a LUA virus going around GMod where you type cough nonstop to all friends on Steam. Anyone have any information about this? Haha, so apparently some hacker screwed up Garry's mod on Steam today, spamming cough cough in the player chat. Apparently there's some major virus being spread throughout GMod. Stay away from random servers on that game for a while. Over on FacePunch though, panic was already setting in as forum users didn't know what was going on. Were Steam users getting hacked? Were other source engine games affected? Was GMod done for good? Some people were able to find fixes early on, but with how widespread and active it was, it seemed like things were only gonna get worse, not better. That was until the creator of GMod, Garry Newman, made a post on Twitter. Now, reminder, Garry is British. And while this was happening, it was midnight where he lived. So he probably had to haul himself out of bed to fix this issue. We're aware of the source.net file exploit. Fixing it now. Should have a patch out within a couple of hours. A few hours later, an update will be pushed out for GMod, along with Garry making this post on FacePunch. I have put a patch out. As far as I can tell, even though they had the ability to do potentially nastier things, they didn't actually do them. Which makes sense, because their names were all over it, so they'd probably have the FBI knocking on their doors. The exploit seems to have been localized to when you were running Garry's mod. I have made an attempt to clean up any files the exploit dropped and made it so it wouldn't be able to load them even if they were still there. Let me know if it has any problems/info. After many hours of non-stop coughing, people can finally breathe a sigh of relief. The cough virus incident was over. Players can finally get back on GMod without any fear of becoming infected. While many were happy with the outcome, others still had a lingering question. Why did this all happen, and who was responsible for it? Well, we'll get into the who and why in a little bit, but we gotta talk about how much of a troll this virus creator was. He often gaslit people into thinking that users entirely unrelated to the incident were somehow behind it. First, people thought that Vin was responsible for it, since his face and name were often brought up. Of course, Vin made it abundantly clear that he wasn't behind it, and one thing I gotta mention, he actually just started working as a GMod dev at this point. So that's gotta suck for him. Then others began to suspect that Handsome Matt was behind it, since his name was copyrighted in the virus's code. And while he did play into the joke, obviously it wasn't him either. People also suspected that Steam users Ace Cool and Tom had something to do with it, since again, the virus sent out friend requests to both of them. I don't really know much about these two, but it wasn't either of them. Even without the virus creator gaslighting everyone, some users were just kind of, making stuff up. Some people thought that Derp Trolling was behind the virus, since they took credit for it on their Twitter. Derp Trolling were behind many DDoS attacks back then, but that's all they really did, DDoS attacks. There's no real proof that they were the one who made the virus, so not our suspect. Some geniuses even thought that this was a late April Fool's joke from Garry.
Hey, just was wondering, is this an out-of-season April Fool's joke?
No, it wasn't. That then led everyone to the virus's GitHub page, which they were able to find very easily just from looking at the code. The GitHub page has a bunch of comments written down about how the virus works, and also this is where the 30,000 players infected number comes in. However, people then discovered that the virus wasn't made to ruin GMod's reputation or whatever. It was actually made to warn Garry about this exploit. I know, it's a little hard to believe after the absolute mess it left behind, but looking at the code, somehow it all starts to make sense. There are comments made about how the virus wasn't dangerous in nature. No Steam wallets were being stolen, the virus was scripted to stop working after a while, and the creator was even hoping that the page would get a lot of views. It was not because he wanted people to create their own viruses. In fact, he specifically stated that he won't release the source code of the DLLs until a patch came out. Although, I don't think he ever did end up releasing them. No, he was hoping for a lot of views to just simply bring awareness. And well, it certainly worked, because after the patch, there hasn't been a major virus incident ever since. While there have been a couple of scares like Glue Library, if you know, you know, none of these incidents were as disruptive as the cough virus. The main reason there hasn't been another cough virus, except for the one in real life, is because no workaround has been found. The exploit was well and truly patched, exactly what the virus's creator wanted. Oh, I'm sorry, you're probably still waiting to find out who was responsible for all this. Well, alright, the creator of the virus was none other than Chris Astor. Yeah, the same Chris Astor that was behind those previous exploits, including the GMan Virus. That same Chris Astor made this virus to bring awareness to an exploit. Not to destroy the game or to scare people, it was simply to bring awareness. Huh? You know, whenever I talk about Chris Astor, I can never get a good read on the guy. One moment, he's screwing over players in more ways than one, often taunting them, and next he's creating a virus just so devs can fix an exploit. And all the while, he's randomly dragging people into all this because haha funny, I guess. If I were to put Chris Astor on a alignment chart, it would be chaotic neutral, because this guy does whatever the hell he wants, regardless on if it's helping or hurting people. But out of all the people who could have done this, I'm kind of glad it was Chris Astor. His chaotic nature made a lot of noise, enough to get Garry's attention rather quickly. To really drive in my point, let me quote a comment that was made in the GitHub page. "This could have been silent, And honestly, this speaks volumes, pun not intended. Yeah, this virus started off as silent, but Chris Aster decided to go loud by the end. Imagine if someone else discovered this exploit and decided to remain silent. What would have happened? Well, even more players would have been affected, and worse yet, it could have very well compromised every Steam account that came into contact with it. Emails, passwords, and possibly even people's credit card info could have been stolen had this been silent. So, the fact that Chris Aster decided to make a lot of noise instead was, ironically, the best thing he could have done. Say what you want about him and his past, but in a weird twist of fate, Chris Aster was actually the hero we wanted but didn't know we need. Because of his actions, Garry's mod is now more safer than it's ever been, thanks to the cough virus incident. Thank you all for watching, take care, and as always, I will see you guys next time.